Story 1. No. The internet was amazing for so many reasons. I miss the pre-social media internet from 1997 to 2008. Story 2. I miss not knowing what everyone thought all the time. Ignorance was peaceful, not blissful. It was simply quieter. Story 3. More than the pre-internet era, what I miss are the days before the mobile internet. As nice as it is to have all of human knowledge in my pocket, it was also nice not to be connected all the time. Whether you were at work, at a friend's house, or 1,000 miles from home, it was all the same. Offline and unreachable. There was a lot of freedom in that, and I never appreciated it until it was gone. Story 4. The world and the internet were better before social media. Now it is full of bots and grifters, many run by foreign adversaries trying to destabilize the West. And they are winning. Story 5. I miss the internet of the 1990s when it was fun and exciting, a new Wild West before social media. Story 6. The first 5 or 10 years when it was the real public internet were the golden age. Silicon golems in your computer would scream at you if you picked up the phone. Each website was hand-built by someone proud of their work, and you could tell everything was made by hand. They were so excited to show themselves to the world. Early massively multiplayer online role-playing games like The Realm, which is still online, were not all about the endgame experience and had no microtransactions. Nothing was designed to advertise to you. The phrase "you got mail" meant something. Chat rooms existed on their own, and each had a persona. Not all were good. People asked age, sex, location, but we were all excited to be there. The freedom and innocence of the early internet feels mythical because it will never be seen again. Everyone was happy to be there. There was tangible excitement in every facet. People were testing boundaries in ways you could feel, and that made you as an individual happy to be online. There is no comparison to the modern-day internet. It is not just that things were different. It is not something later users can fully understand. It was the best last vestige of the 1990s. Having said that, I am in my mid-30s and I got on the internet very early because of my father. I literally grew up with it starting in 1996. It was also a unique, incomparable experience growing up with it. Imagine the whole world could not talk to itself for so long, and suddenly it can. The whole world is open to you and you to it, and it is still figuring that out. It was amazing. Story 7. I have an additional question for those over 40. Do you find yourselves addicted to activities on the internet? Story 8. We all miss pre-algorithm social media, which did not become toxic and did not run the world. Story 9. I miss the original internet, which ordinary people could not easily access. Google is just a retail system, and information is heavily censored. Story 10. Pre-internet was a pain in the ass. Pre-social media and post-internet were bliss. Story 11. My feelings are mixed. The internet became widespread shortly after I graduated from college. I appreciate that. As a child, I played outside and did not have social media. As an adult, I do not know how I would do my job without the internet. Story 12. I am 55. When I studied computer science, the idea of ubiquitous internet in our pockets and functioning artificial intelligence was everybody's wet dream. We failed to foresee the stupidity that comes with it. Story 13. It was peaceful by comparison. There was more room for boredom, which led to imagination and then to creativity. I miss daydreaming. Story 14. Ghost is playing in the background, and it reminds me of a lost era. I miss how different and peaceful the world felt before everyone became so reachable and connected. Story 15. I miss the days before social media. The internet is okay, but social media sucks. Story 16. Before the internet, no. Before social media, yes. Mental peace was easier. Story 17. Hard yes. I was just talking about this an hour ago. I will be brief. This is not subjective. It is well studied and proven. We had more friends, stronger social networks, and people said yes and showed up to gatherings. We talked to strangers at the bar. Now we all look at our phones. When you memorized directions and paid attention to your surroundings to find a destination, you were more engaged with the world and remembered your trip better. We were less polarized and less exhausted about humanity. We were not addicted to pornography or endlessly swiping through dating profiles and becoming more discontent with the people realistically available to us. We had longer attention spans. As others have said, it is less about the internet per se and more about the modern internet and cell phones. The first decade of the web was great. It is really cell phones and the degradation of the web that have negatively impacted our lives to a degree that is difficult to quantify and likely dramatically underestimated. The great irony is that now we have access to all the information in the world, yet people seem more willfully ignorant, more misinformed, less able to discern, and more eager to believe what suits them emotionally. Story 18. Not knowing the answer and not being able to find it instantly was fun. Spirited debates among friends often ended with everyone agreeing to disagree about trivial things. Nowadays, a quick internet search ends the conversation. You are told you are wrong and the discussion is over. The fun wasn't in being right. It was in exchanging ideas and theories. Story 19. I am 75. I raised my children without the internet until they were in high school. When I visit my grandchildren and all six are together, they sit and play on their phones. I think we have lost much of our ability to interact face-to-face with other people. Story 20. No, I do not. The internet is amazing. I have access to every single bit of brilliant knowledge and meaningless nonsense I could ever want, right from the comfort of my own home or anywhere. Really, it is fantastic. Story 21. I miss the days before Web 2.0, the second generation of the web. That was before it was possible to have dynamic websites that offered tailored content feeds. Back then, a website was a static page that worked the same for every user. This era ended in the very early 2000s. Probably 1991 to 2003 was the golden era of the internet. It was useful enough to serve as a resource but did not impose on our lives. In the golden age of the internet, the product was the internet. Today, we are the product. This shift began in 2004 when Gmail launched and an ecosystem of services arose that were free in price but costly in personal data and privacy. Story 22. This was before social media and before mobile phones. There was not much stress when meeting up. You were flexible and figured things out. Story 23. I miss the early internet days, roughly 1995 to 2005, the pre-smartphone era. Things worsened when everyone gained access to the internet through smartphones and everything became commercialized. Story 24. The internet is a wonderful tool in many ways. What I miss are the days before cell phones. Going out without having your time interrupted by calls, texts, and messages. People hanging out and talking, not constantly checking a device. Story 25. I am 76. The internet changed my life for the better. First, my work involved research that once required a library or expensive subscriptions. Now the information is a click away. I am an introvert, probably somewhere on the spectrum. The internet has allowed me to communicate, avoid shopping, crowds and lines, find the best places to hike, learn about musical influences, and much more. After my wife passed away 16 years ago, I met my partner through online dating, and life is good. If I need to figure something out tomorrow, I can find what I need. I do miss sitting on the porch of my grandparents' farm, listening to them tell stories over the crickets and the occasional frightening sound from the woods. There was no TV, phones, or internet, only an outhouse. There was nothing to browse. Story 26. Future generations will not understand what the line "your mom threw away your best porn magazine" means from the Beastie Boys song "Fight for Your Right to Party," nor why we would have to fight over it. Story 27. Yes, because we used to spend much more time with other people than we do now. Story 28. I miss not having the internet and being outside all day when I was a kid. I even enjoyed the early days of the computer industry. For me, that was the mid to late 1980s. When I get worn out during the day, I tinker with Commodore or old Macintosh computers, or with a briefcase compact that was extremely heavy, and I mess with small, low-quality electronic parts. After the internet arrived, things started speeding up. Fast forward to the past 12 months, which have been a living hell with artificial intelligence ratcheting everything up several notches. Artificial intelligence slop is starting to infiltrate everything. YouTube videos are getting worse, and movies and shows have declined in quality as well. Story 29. I miss the little mysteries of life. Everyone just Googles everything. It's great that we have access to information, but sometimes it's fun to talk about the what-ifs and possibilities as everyone tries to come up with an answer. That habit stifles creativity and the kinds of conversations we have. Today, at the work lunch table, someone asked if we have canaries in Australia. Before we could even discuss our guesses, a coworker Googled it and said, yes, we do. End of topic. Back to talking about Amanda's stepchildren again. Story 30. I am 45. I would say the peak of the internet was roughly 2005 to 2015. Things are now so incredibly bad with artificial intelligence slop and social media running amok. Story 31. I miss the time before social media. I wish we could go back to around 2006. After the iPhone, everything went downhill. Story 32. I am not 40, but I do miss the pre-internet days because back then connections were real and conversations were meaningful. Postscript. I spent a good part of my childhood and my teenage years in a time without the internet. Story 33. No, I fucking love the global positioning system. If you were lost before the internet, you had to drive around until you found a gas station and ask someone there to help you find your way. Now your phone tells you how to get places, even which lane to be in on the freeway. I wouldn't trade that just for some nostalgia. Story 34. For reference, I graduated in 1991. The internet has changed the way young people mature. I'm not saying everyone, but in general people under 30 today are often vapid, narcissistic, and lack personality. They also seem to have virtually no developed common sense or problem-solving skills. In short, I miss being able to go days without being surprised by young people's attitudes or personalities, especially young men. Story 35. I miss lively dinner conversations when we could speculate, try to work out answers logically, or hope someone at the table happened to know a bit of trivia. Now one of the kids looks up the answer online as soon as the question comes up, and I am left wondering what we will talk about now. Story 36. I miss how I used to get together with friends and talk to them on the phone for hours. Now everyone is annoyed if you call to talk. They want to get to the point and end the call quickly. I feel like the internet has made it easier to manage friendships than to enjoy them. Story 37. I miss the dial-up internet days when you would be playing multiplayer Age of Empires 2, and then someone would call the landline and kill the connection. Story 38. Libraries, while useful, offered limited information and were only open during normal business hours. Librarians were often helpful but could also be frustrating gatekeepers. Occasionally they opened unknown doors. The convenience and power of the internet are truly amazing every single day. Story 39. I miss when the internet was magical. America Online startup discs, getting on Dogpile to do an internet search, joining an internet chat room and being amazed that you were messaging someone from across the country. Adding them to your ICQ Instant Messenger, the Microsoft Network Instant Messenger, or the America Online Instant Messenger. Playing Yahoo Pool and asking, age, sex, location? It was an early teen wonderland. Story 40. I miss the early days of the internet when it was just smart, nerdy people online and before it began dialing directly into other people's computers via bulletin board systems in the 1980s and early 1990s. The democratization of technology has been truly horrendous to behold. Story 41. Human interaction was more of a thing. Even if you were a shy loner, you had to have some manners to try to get along with people. I think all of us, on some level, were curious about strangers. Nowadays, nothing is private. We know your favorite color, your taxes, your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. We know what your private parts look like and how you vote. Story 42. I miss the early days of the internet, when things were less toxic and not filled with disinformation or conspiracy theories. I also miss the time before mobile phones had cameras. It was nice not having to be available around the clock or having every moment documented. Story 43. Not really. What I miss is the days when no one expected you to be reachable by phone or text message all the time. We made plans in advance, and last-minute changes were the exception rather than the rule. I went out and people just accepted that they could not reach me until I got back. Story 44. Yes. There is much to be gained from figuring things out by just doing them and not watching a 10-second explainer. Story 45. Yes, we actually had to be social and interact with one another. I miss going to the movies, receiving handwritten letters, and getting catalogs in the mail and so on. I hate the internet, Netflix, and email, and how it has helped to spread so many lies and untruths. Story 46. Pre-internet? No. I do miss the very early days. We just needed faster access. Story 47. Boredom inspires creativity. The internet cures boredom but unfortunately inhibits creativity. Most of my art skills developed from boredom. I love having knowledge at my fingertips, but it is kryptonite to productivity. Story 48. I miss how long the days used to be. There was so much more to do. Story 49. Yes and no. I have met some incredible friends who I have known for more than 10 years, but it definitely comes with a cost. Everyone acts like a know-it-all, and instead of having conversations it is lecturing or yelling in all caps and name-calling. Racists and bigots have found communities where their beliefs are normalized, and they have become emboldened. If I had to choose, I think the pre-internet days were better for mental health and socializing. Story 50. I am 46. I think the world would have been a much better place if the internet had never existed. Story 51. Some parts, yes. Some parts, no. I wish we weren't so reliant on the internet. I want the late 1990s and early 2000s internet back, when it was fun and the idea that it's not real, it's just the internet was kind of true. Now life is the internet. Appliances that require internet make living without it basically impossible, at least in the global north. Yet conservatives complain that poor people get free phones worth only $50. Because you can't do anything without a cell phone or internet. All applications are online now. Do you think if you write no phone number on an application you fill out at a library or put a friend's number they'll hire you? Sadly, it's needed now. I heard more people in the world have access to the internet than to running water. Worldwide, many villages with pumps still have internet, though. Story 52. I miss being able to go for coffee, dinner, or a drink with family or friends without people being glued to their phones for half the time. Story 53. I am 68 and a late adopter. I did not get a cell phone until around 2002, that sweet Nokia brick. I did not get an iPhone until around 2015, though I have been using email since about 1990. I am opposed to social media, and I see groups of people who come to my tourist town from New York City in groups. They are body and soul connected to their phones. And social media, I will see a group of them all on their phones while simultaneously talking to each other. They hold their phones next to one another's phones, stare, gaze, and laugh. The totality of their absorption into their devices is beyond belief to an old fart like me. They are actually mediating, monitoring, and curating their own lives in real time. I am no stranger to the internet. I spend a ridiculous amount of time looking up things and watching YouTube videos about topics I am interested in. It helps me hugely in many ways. For example, learning Italian. Still, I can walk away from it for days at a time. I just do not care about most of what is on there. But here's the big but. I can barely remember what my friends and I used to do to entertain ourselves before the internet. At night after work. That is how quickly progress wipes out the past. We were sociable in ways I do not think people are anymore. We sat around and talked, watched Seinfeld together on a 13-inch TV, went out for walks, rented movies at the local video store, went to bars and talked to strangers. In that sense, I do miss the pre-internet days since I think they were much less isolating. I reserve a special hatred for social media. I know for a fact that the way I lived in New York City for 6 years in the late 1980s and early 1990s, meeting people on the street or in a park, open conversation between strangers, is a thing of the past. People are siloed in their own exclusive, incestuous groups and no longer make eye contact or engage with the broader public. That seems like a tragedy. Time will tell, I guess, but social media almost certainly does not make people happier. I can clearly remember how bad my life looked by comparison when Facebook came out. Me replacing the universal joints on my pickup while other people posed on a mountaintop in Italy, and it immediately gave me the ick, a major case of the ick, so I never even got into it. Story 54. Yes, I do. There was a sweet spot between what our phones could and could not do. We had caller identification but no voicemail, and we could screen calls by monitoring answering machines. You could go for a drive to clear your head and no one could reach you. People could read maps and follow directions. It was still easy to pirate cable television. Music television played music. It was a glorious time to be alive. Story 55. We do not need social media any more than an extra hole in the head. If email were used only for business communication and for keeping up with friends who live a long way away, and not full of spam, it would be great. I also appreciate sending documents, resumes, and job applications online, but receiving unsolicited political opinions is unnecessary. Story 56. Yes, I miss the way we had to use our imagination every day to entertain ourselves. I'd run over to each of my friends' houses to see if they could come out and play, or even better, to go to the house of a friend who had the Nintendo Entertainment System. Story 57. No, I don't miss it. I miss the days before Fox News and Rush Limbaugh, when people still had some self-respect and the ability to hold common ideals in mind. The internet didn't destroy that. Venal people did it slowly, deliberately, and with malice. It was the perpetrators, not their tools, who created the situations we see today. Story 58. The internet was fantastic before social media. I missed that time. The era before the internet was also fine, but anyone who claims it was better is wrong. What has made things worse is that everyone has a platform to spread misinformation. There have always been foolish people and conspiracy believers, but social media lets them connect with like-minded people and gives them a platform to spread ignorance. Something that should have made the world smarter has instead made a large portion of it less able to think critically. The worst part has been how openly racist some people have become. It used to be that you had to back up the words you said, so people did not often express such views. Now someone online can feel safe in their home and say racist things without fear of direct consequences. Story 59. I miss interacting with people, but I appreciate the option to do many things online without in-person contact. So it is a trade-off. Story 60. A short story about a widowed old man who began using the internet after his grandchild showed it to him. He started reading articles and playing games. It seemed like fun. One day his son came to visit and asked how he felt. A bit empty, the old man said. Really? But with all that internet and gaming entertainment? The son replied. The old man said, it is fun for a while, but it is not real life, and I am beginning to notice problems I did not know I had before the internet and modern electronics. There is something about that. Story 61. It is complicated for me. I enjoy the internet, but I could do without social media such as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. The internet before Facebook was a fun time. Story 62. Absolutely not. The internet is one of the greatest and most important inventions in human history. The amount of knowledge available to anyone with access to the internet, which is essentially everyone in the developed world and many people in the developing world, would have been unfathomable 50 years ago, much less a century. The only remotely apt comparison is the printing press. The problem is widespread social media driven by algorithms. Story 63. Yes and no. Things like the global positioning system on my phone would have been invaluable back in the MapQuest days. The ease with which we can do things with a smartphone today is remarkable. I mean, not before the internet, but before social media. Social media is ruining society. Story 64. The older I get, the more I realize that nothing is black and white. Everything is varying shades of gray. I miss the pre-internet era, but I do not want to go back there. It would definitely be nice to visit once in a while, though. Story 65. Yes and no. The pornography is appealing, but I am not sure it is worth the slow collapse of Western civilization. Story 66. I miss the pre-social media and pre-smartphone days, although the pre-internet era had its drawbacks. The internet is incredibly useful for many things, but social media is one of the worst inventions. Having a smartphone in your pocket with countless apps and access to all human knowledge detracts from conversation and causes people to miss out on life because they are watching what others are doing. Socializing was better back then, though a lot harder to organize. Story 67. No. For someone who is disabled and queer, having the internet was a lifeline. I could live without social media. Story 68. I am not from the pre-internet era. I get nostalgic for the pre-smartphone days occasionally. Story 69. Yes, I miss those old days with fewer distractions and no non-stop swiping or unconscious time wasting. Story 70. The introduction of the internet was good. Social media has been a disaster for me. Story 71. I miss when social media was not as large and twisted as it is now. Story 72. I miss the days before smartphones and social media. The internet is good. Story 73. I miss the early internet days before the iPhone. I'm probably just wearing rose-colored glasses, though. Story 74. As a voracious reader, I had 2 to 3 times the knowledge of anyone else, which was a huge advantage. Once people could look anything up at will, I lost that edge. Story 75. I miss the early days before Facebook. It was pretty sacred and a nice escape from the bullshit. Talking with friends felt top secret in your own little world. I feel Facebook turned it into a popularity contest, ruined privacy, and damaged much of what made it special. Story 76. I do not miss the pre-internet era per se, but I sure do miss life before social media. Story 77. It was absolutely glorious to have the freedom to do ridiculously stupid things without it being recorded or tracked. The 1970s to 1990s were great times to grow up in. Story 78. No, I don't miss them, but I'm sad for those who didn't get to experience it. Story 79. I miss the early internet. Monoculture and social media were fucking mistakes. Story 80. Yes and no. I miss the world before people carried the internet with them wherever they went. If you look at how social media has shortened people's attention spans, fueled divisions, and contributed to the mental health crisis among young people, it is hard to say it isn't unalloyed good. I worry that putting all the world's problems at your fingertips is more than our brains can handle. Yes, it may help to learn about a natural disaster, a famine, or a war crime, but if I cannot do anything about these problems, and nobody can, it becomes an emotional overload. What I really miss is being unreachable without my employer, friends, or family thinking it is odd or antisocial. I grew up on the northern Great Plains, where you could drive for miles without seeing anyone. I miss that isolation, that sense of being alone and cut off from the world. Story 81. The internet is awesome, but social media and the hunt for attention are problematic. Of course, you can be nostalgic about the days when we connected by phone calls or letters, but it has made things better. Story 82. The early internet was amazing before social media and paid advertising algorithms. I do love the mapping and global positioning system of smartphones. It has been amazing for hiking and travel. Story 83. I miss the days before I knew how stupid some of my family and friends are. Not everyone needs a soapbox. Story 84. The internet was fine until social media showed up. I missed the time before cell phones. Being able to hop in my car and drive without being pinged on a map was amazing. Story 85. I don't miss the pre-internet days. I'm just disappointed in what it's done to people with social media addiction, disinformation, and so on. Story 86. I sometimes miss not knowing everything people say and do, including the political nonsense they post. I don't need to know what people do every hour or how much better their life is than mine. It seems like people compete, shouting that their lives are much better than everyone else's. Story 87. Back in the 1970s, it was more interesting when it was mostly defense, academics, and a smattering of hackers. Then Bill Gates happened, and any fool with a modem could inject their stupidity into it. It is just so difficult to sort out the chaff these days, and artificial intelligence has made it so much worse. Story 88. Yes, gods, yes. No overstimulation with news, useless fluff, or flash-in-the-pan bullshit. Kids were bullied and moved on, not driven to the point of killing themselves or others. We are fucked up beyond salvation. Story 89. I'm almost 30 and can tell you that the internet is not the problem. Social media is. Story 90. Laughing out loud. It is ironic that people use social platforms to say they miss the internet before social media. Story 91. No, the internet was really great for a long time. Sometimes it still is. Discussion forums and hobby groups brought many minds together, and knowledge was freely shared while friends were discovered. You still had to watch out for people spouting, Nonsense, but there were also bona fide experts offering their expertise for free because they were passionate about their subjects, such as classic cars, tropical fish, and Linux. There was something for everyone, and all the world's knowledge was at your disposal. In 2005, if you wanted to know who made the most free throws in the 1982 to 1983 National Basketball Association season, you could search the internet and find the answer in under a minute. In 1985, finding the same information meant putting on your shoes, going to the library, and looking up a sports almanac. If you were traveling at the dentist's office or it was nighttime, Sunday, or a holiday, you were stuck. Total time ranged from 30 minutes to a few days. Another factor that harmed the golden age was PhotoBucket. For years, people on discussion forums documented projects and wrote tutorials with pictures hosted on PhotoBucket, then embedded those images in forum posts. That saved forums from hosting all the photos. Then PhotoBucket began charging to host images, and many users who had uploaded thousands of photos over several years lost everything. The internet is still full of old posts with dead photo links like archaeological ruins. When that happened, millions of people realized they did not own or control the content they were creating, and it could disappear in an instant. Story 92. I am 39, so I am at the cutoff. I do not miss the time before the internet. I miss the time before social media. That is what ruined everything. Story 93. I miss pre-cell phone and pre-social media. The information age where data can be indexed, searched, and correlated is awesome, but social media is a cancer. Story 94. No. I like being able to find out anything I want at any time. Story 95. Yes. Technology has in many ways negatively affected the human experience, especially for children and young people. Story 96. Yes, I'm sure there was the same level of stupidity before the internet, but we were only exposed to what was around us. With the internet, the world's stupidity is in our faces every day. Story 97. I have had the internet since the Prodigy days. I honestly do not remember a time without it. I miss the days when it did not control every aspect of daily life. Story 98. I've worked in internet networking most of my life. I've always said the internet is the ultimate double-edged sword in human existence. It is both the best and the worst thing that has ever happened to humanity. It provides unprecedented access to information and knowledge at our fingertips, but it also amplifies every opinion, fosters addiction to constant connection, and encourages people to share opinions and pictures of their food. Story 99. I don't miss it, but I am disappointed in how things turned out. The future seems so bright, yet smartphone and social media addiction and toxicity, along with an online wasteland of bots and trolls, make me feel we are headed toward a dystopia. Story 100. In the early days of the internet, it was something you sat down to log on to, something you actively set aside time for, much like a book, a game, or a movie. I do not miss the days before the internet, but I do miss the time before we were always online, and especially the time before social media. Story 101. I miss the internet that was not ruled or manipulated by algorithms. Story 102. I miss the early days of the internet. It's nice to have access to conduct research online. Unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation now. Story 103. I miss the days before the internet. We are bombarded with more information than ever. I do not have data, but I feel everyone is more stressed and constantly switched on. Those times were more relaxed and moved at a slower pace. You could have conversations about questions nobody knew the answer to, which helped you learn what made others tick. Nowadays, it is a race to look up the answer online. Story 104. I miss the pre-smartphone days when people had to communicate in person. The original internet, before it was regulated and manipulated, was an amazing thing. No artificial intelligence, no Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok garbage. Story 105. I miss the days when people were not glued to their phones, especially while driving. What the heck? I miss when having an opinion meant you had to be prepared to back it up in person. You could not anonymously insult people or troll online. I miss when the news usually included photos or videos to support claims. Now any influencer can say anything and millions will blindly believe them, and nonsense statistics are accepted as long as they appear. In a nice-looking meme, someone else mentioned infidelity. In the past, you had to go talk to someone in person or call their landline to ask them out. and the internet has made it much easier for people to be unfaithful. On the positive side, it is great to be able to search a topic instead of consulting a shelf of encyclopedias that may be 20 years old. And as a parent, you can often quickly find answers to questions your child asks and share them. Story 106. I miss the days before around-the-clock connectivity and the rampant monetization of the internet. Being able to communicate with people from all over the world or learn new things instantaneously was great, but then it became about algorithms and search engine optimization. Story 107. I miss the pre-social media days. The internet was much better before Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms, and before influencers who ruin everything for personal gain. Story 108. Before the internet, stupid people were forced to keep to themselves. The internet has united them, but they are still stupid. Story 109. The world was less crazy when you had to talk smack face to face. Story 110. I miss the pre-social media days, especially platforms that encourage people to competitively photograph the minutiae of daily life, or worse, prompt parents to do the same with their children's lives. Story 111. People used to have common sense. Now many believe everything on the internet, so people need to be taught that not everything online is real, just as they were taught that everything on television is not real. Story 112. I feel like the internet was fine with chat rooms. The mini computer in our pockets and the monetization of everything have made it all weird. This is just the start. Advertisements are everywhere. Story 113. I miss the pre-internet days. You used to be able to mislead people, but now they can fact-check you on the spot. Story 114. I actually miss the early internet days, 1997 to 2001. It was the best of both worlds. The Wild West, and you had to put in effort to find entertainment on the internet. There were no wireless internet passwords, Gran Turismo until 2 in the morning, and hopping curbs on your Huffy to ride to the mall to hang out with no fear or anxiety. That was living the life as a 13-year-old. Story 115. I miss the days before smartphones. There was a sweet spot from about 1997 to 2009 when the internet was very cool but not in our pockets. We had to go home to log on. Around 2010, flip phones became smartphones and everything kind of went to hell. Story 116. I do not miss the pre-internet era. I really miss the time before social media and online dating. Story 117. I miss the internet before artificial intelligence. As for the pre-internet days, some were good, some were not. Story 118. When Facebook required your college email address, that was the peak at the time. Story 119. I miss the internet era before mobile phones. It feels like too much because of the constant flow of information. When you had to be at home to use a desktop computer, it felt very different. Story 120. Heck no. People can now receive a world-class education in many topics, yet they doom scroll instead. Story 121. I am 36, and I miss the Wild West of the early internet before modern social media. Ironically, Reddit reminds me of old-school forums. Those were the days when we did not have to worry about artificial intelligence or algorithms. We simply made great content out of love for the game. Story 122. I think it was around 1997 or 1998 when I made my first websites by writing hypertext markup language, which I had learned from books and by copying other websites. Tables were tricky to build. When Adobe Flash became more available, it felt like mind-blowing technology. Getting to know people from different continents through the internet was cool. The world really started to feel smaller. There was so much new and exciting content to read, and plenty of low-quality MPEG-1 audio layer 3 files to listen to. Writing blogs was fun. Someone even read them. Building forum communities and an online presence was rewarding. Being digital before the masses felt special. I would say the internet was not truly ruined until around 2011 to 2012. Maybe that is what the Maya meant by the end of times. Story 123. I do not miss the pre-internet era. I do miss the pre-social media era. Story 124. I miss the time before social media took over. I do like the internet. Story 125. I hate the capitalization of social media. MySpace was S tier. I feel sorry for people who missed the early days of the internet. Now it is all about making money off everything in terms of content. Story 126. I miss being a kid and not knowing what a fucked up place the world was. Having to go to the library to look something up really sucked. Story 127. I guess some people cannot read. The question is directed to people age 40 and older, not about your intelligence quotient. The internet created connections among people. I miss the simpler times with face-to-face communication. Today, people rely too much on technology. There were fewer scams and no mask to hide behind. On the other hand, it has made life a bit easier, but there is always a price to be paid. In my humble opinion. Story 128. God. No. I am disabled and retired. Life would be very boring without the internet. Story 129. Yes and no. I miss the simplicity of growing up in the 90s. I am only 45, so I have had the internet all of my adult life. I do not really miss the pre-internet days. I am just nostalgic. Story 130. Many things are much easier to learn, but at the same time we have people who spread their stupidity. Story 131. What are you talking about? I am still 24. I have been 24 for the last 10 years. Story 132. I miss being able to be alone and unreachable when I need to be. Story 133. I miss reading books. Before smartphones and the internet, I would read at least 4 hours a day. Now I just scroll. Story 134. I miss being able to disappear when I wanted. There were no traffic cameras, no Easy Pass or license plate toll readers, and no cell phone tracking. If you did not want to be found, you could hide. Story 135. I just wish everyone could learn to drive properly. Social media and influencer culture have enforced a me first, fuck you main character mentality, and it is getting old. Story 136. No. Solely because it is much easier to pass the time now when I'm waiting in line for something. Story 137. Learning anything required effort and felt better retained. Communication between people felt more genuine. It did not feel like information overload. Story 138. I remember the commercials for an early internet provider called Prodigy. Get in, get out, get on with your life. Because the internet is a tool, not a lifestyle. Oh, how I wish that were still true. Story 139. People were not ready for the internet and especially for social media. It used to be that everyone shared the same basic facts, and even less informed people were at least somewhat on the same page. Now many populations contain large voting segments that live in an alternate reality, which is not sustainable. Hopefully it is not a great filter that explains why we do not hear other life when we listen to the stars. Story 140. I miss the weather back then and all the cool cartoons and cheesy movies without lame computer-generated imagery. That's about it. Story 141. Smartphones ruined everything. I participate in social media, but it is the dumbest, most goddamn waste of time and it just pisses me off. We used to talk to people for Christ's sake. Now you go hang out with folks and everyone is constantly checking their phone. As a society, we became uncomfortable with brief silences and got bad at conversation. It sucks. Story 142. I sympathize with those who wail about the impact of social media on society, and I think it has had a terrible effect on journalism. On balance, the internet is a wonderful tool that significantly improves the quality of life. Story 143. I miss everybody not staring at their phones all the time. It's not so much an internet issue as a social media and smartphone issue. Story 144. I don't miss anything from before the internet except perhaps that people were more outgoing. Story 145. I do not miss the past. It had its time. I am always looking forward to new and exciting times. People were in their own bubble before the internet. There are no excuses to be in one now. I cannot speak for the generation after me, but people aged 40 and older are far more knowledgeable than our parents were. We can use the internet to find information instead of waiting to see a specialist or going to the library. Story 146. I just turned 40. We got the internet when I was 10, so only a small portion of my life was pre-internet. The internet grew at the same time I did, which I appreciate. Old memories sometimes pop into my mind. Calling a movie theater to hear the automated recording of movie showtimes. Scanning the newspaper, calling multiple people listed in the white pages with the same name to find the person you were looking for, using Encarta before Wikipedia was a thing, and getting a new Rand McNally atlas every year for our car before MapQuest existed. The access to information that the internet provides has made life much easier. I cannot imagine life now without it. Story 147. Absolutely not. People focus on the negative. Try fixing or maintaining equipment without the internet. It is an amazing tool. Avoid social media as much as possible. Story 148. No, but I do miss the days before my parents used the internet. Story 149. I'm as guilty as anyone for loving the internet. I do miss the days when it took effort to obtain knowledge. Instead, people just walk around searching the internet and doing do-it-yourself projects. Having 2 thumbs and a cell phone is all it takes to be considered smart anymore. Story 150. I feel like maps and early streaming were good, but the internet and social media became worse. It got bad when they shifted from friends and family posting pictures to mostly news and advertisements, and then became even worse with short videos. Story 151. Yes. My attention span is poor these days, and I feel like I do less than I used to because I keep watching low-quality videos on YouTube or scrolling through Reddit aimlessly. Things take longer, but I do not think that is a bad thing. The pace of modern life is too fast. Story 152. There are aspects of it that I miss, but I also remember times when there was nothing to do and I would sit and stare. Story 153. I miss certain places or times when I was unreachable. Everything is connected. This has both good and bad aspects for obvious reasons. Story 154. No, it has nothing to do with the internet. There is more to life than spending time online. Story 155. Ha! Doomed from the start. Feeble politicians were already looking for more ways to subvert the truth. It was a dream come true. Even though adoption was slow, the reckless morons eventually got hold of it. Story 156. Being able to play a role-playing game without having to disconnect from all social media to avoid spoilers. Story 157. We were not voluntary internet slaves back then. Take me as an example. I had an internet connection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even if I woke up to go to the bathroom, I was online. Story 158. I just do not like that they have convinced people to pay for things that used to be free, and the cookie tracking seems superfluous. Story 159. Yes, because I could relax back then. I could call someone and leave a message, knowing they were not home, so I did not have to talk to them. I did not have to look at advertisements every minute of the day. Fewer choices, a calmer mind. I could go to Blockbuster, pick a movie, and buy chocolate-covered gummy bears. I never knew about things like 2 girls, 1 cup. I did not need to know about that. I did not have to worry that every stupid thing I did and said would be posted where millions of people could see it. People never told me to kill myself or threaten to rape me. Mostly, it is because I did not feel the enormous pressure to be productive every minute of the day. There are many things I do not miss about those times, including very bad ones. Story 160. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the internet was a place you went to. You would use your computer after school or on weekends to log in and chat with friends on messenger apps or play games. I miss that. Now literally everyone is connected all the time. The novelty has completely worn off. Story 161. I am in my late 30s. I do not miss smartphones. I am addicted to mine. Story 162. Life was, on balance, better before the internet. Unfortunately, I increasingly feel that the mid-1990s will be looked back on as the time when we peaked, at least in the advanced West. The internet does make some things much easier, a computer in your pocket and all that, but the social cost has been terrible. Story 163. I miss chatting with people face-to-face without it feeling awkward. I miss being genuinely excited to hear about someone's day because I have no idea how their day was. I miss a lot. Story 164. I thought the 1990 to 2000 period was good because people had the internet but also had a social life and were not so obsessively critical of the content. Story 165. No, because I was not having sex back then. That puts a bit of a damper on those days. Story 166. Yes, I miss them because I was always posted to remote game reserves or isolated game farms with no reception or neighbors. It was pure peace in the wilderness, observing indigenous flora and fauna. Story 167. Leaving the house and people being unable to reach you felt like simpler times. Story 168. It isn't the internet that is the problem. It is the advent of social media. Story 169. There are pros and cons. Despite all the bots and grifters online, there was much more fraud and deception in the past. Story 170. I won't say I miss life before the internet, but I do miss the old internet. When I was younger, I would spend an hour or so online in the evening, have some fun, chat with friends, and enjoy it. Now social media broadcasts people's dirty laundry for all to see. I can't use any website without 100 ads bombarding me. There are bots that add nothing, just parrot nonsense and cause problems. Yet I have to spend far more time on it because most of what I buy comes from online stores. I can't go to a venue box office and buy a ticket. I have to wait in a virtual queue to try to beat scalpers to dynamically priced tickets. All of my work files have to be stored in the cloud, so if I lose connection, I can't work. I miss when the internet was a tool that made our lives better, not a nightmare of privacy violations, non-stop advertising, and an unavoidable substitute for human interaction. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.